Hello and welcome to Loppy Loves. If you haven't been here before, my name is Lauren and this channel is all about my life as a foreigner living in Iceland. Today I'm going to be talking about something quite personal and traumatic that happened in my life within my first year of living in Iceland. So I'm going to add a trigger warning right now. In this video I'll be talking about a car accident and a traumatic brain injury. So if you don't want to listen to it, stop watching now. If I get this video edited on time, fingers crossed, it will be released on the anniversary of one of the worst things that has ever happened in my life. And I wanted to talk about it today because at the time it happened, I was trying to find someone that had gone through something similar as a foreigner away from their family and living abroad. And YouTube was one of the places that I looked, and I really struggled to find anyone that had spoken about their experience. And I think it's really important to talk about these experiences so that if anyone else is going through it, they don't feel so alone. I know that I really would have appreciated that at the time if I'd found a video of someone else just talking about it and how life has been since it happened. So on the 3rd of February 2018, I received the worst phone call of my life. It was a Saturday. I had done a shift at work, I'd done the closing shift, and this was a new job that I'd been at for 1 month, and I'd actually had a week off from work within the first month to go home to visit my family for my birthday, and it had been just less than a week since I had returned to Iceland. And so I was kind of still in my what's the word for it, the trial period. I can't remember the right word. Probation. I was in my probation still. And that made it all the worse, I think, because it was a brand new job and I was worried about losing my job, and I had rent to pay in Reykjavik, and it was a very stressful time. So I'd finished my shift. I came home and it was, I think, 7 o'clock at night. My shift finished at 6:30 and I'd just come home. I'd just come into my apartment. I remember I had some rice on the stove, just starting to cook my dinner, and I was sitting on my bed eating a banana. You remember the randomest details. And my phone didn't ring, but no, suddenly a missed call popped up on the screen from my aunt. And I thought it was really strange that my aunt was calling. Not because it's strange, my aunt talks to me, but I thought it was really strange that she'd called me rather than called me through Facebook Messenger. She sent me like a phone call. So I called her back immediately, and when she answered the phone, she sounded upset and I could tell that something was wrong, but I didn't realise the severity of what she was about to tell me. I remember she just said, "Oh lol, it isn't good." And the first thing that I thought for some reason was that her dog had died. I just couldn't think of it. I just couldn't tell it was going to be anything super serious. Okay, that is serious, but I mean, like, I didn't realise it was going to be as serious as what it was. So I just waited, and then she just said, "It's your mum. She was run over." And I didn't really process it at first. I just thought, okay, she's been hit by a car, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. It just didn't occur to me that it could be anything serious. My mum is super healthy and a super strong person, like so strong, fiercely independent and such a strong woman. I've only seen her cry a handful of times in my life, and she's just invincible to me. So it just didn't even occur to me that anything could be wrong with her. So I was like, okay, thanks for telling me, but I didn't think it was anything serious. And then my aunt said, "You have to come home now." And I was like, "What?" She said, "She's in a coma. You need to come home now. The doctor said she's probably not going to make it through the night." And I was just in shock. I didn't really know what to say. So my aunt just kept saying, "You need to come home, like you need to get on a plane and come home now." And that time in the evening, there are no flights to the UK. And also Iceland Air had stopped flying directly to Birmingham, which is my hometown, 1 month before this happened. So there were no direct flights to Birmingham from Iceland anymore. I had to go to either Manchester or London or just somewhere else in the UK, and then take a train or a bus to Birmingham, which takes a few hours no matter what you take. And I just told my aunt, I can't, there's no way for me to get home tonight. She just said, you have to. You need to be here, it's your mum. And I said, I would, but there genuinely is nothing I can do. And she started suggesting maybe you could take the ferry. I was like, okay, take the ferry, I think I have to go to Denmark, and I think it would take a few days for me to get to the UK, it'd be even longer. I said, the first flight I can get is in the morning. I can't come straight to Birmingham, so I'll get a flight to Manchester or London and then just take transport down, and I'll be there in Birmingham tomorrow afternoon. And I don't remember the phone call ending, but the phone call ended there. And I just slowly walked into the living room to see my flatmate and just told her what was going on. I just said, there's been an emergency back home, I have to fly home tomorrow, my mum's been hit by a car. And I didn't cry, I was just so numb. I didn't know what to do. So I just sat on the sofa with her. Then I called my boyfriend. I called my boyfriend after the phone call, and he already knew, because when my aunt couldn't get in touch with me with the first missed call, she called him. He was in Selfoss, and he told me that he was straight on the way to Reykjavik to come and get me, and we were going to go to Birmingham the next day. So I was sitting with my roommate, and she was just trying to comfort me. I think she brought me sweets, I don't really remember. And she didn't realise how serious it was either for maybe an hour. And then it started to sink in how serious the situation was, the more I was explaining it. She didn't speak perfect English, so I think it was just a misunderstanding, and she didn't understand properly what I was saying. I remember at some point I could smell burning, and I'd burnt the rice that I was cooking on the stove, so she went and dealt with that. And I went on my laptop to book some flights, and I realised I couldn't afford any flights the next day. And as if by magic, my aunt must have read my mind. She called me at that moment and asked me if I had the money to get a flight home, and I said, honestly, I don't. So she just told me to use my uncle's credit card, and the first credit card that they sent me, it didn't work, it declined. And they'd sent me the wrong details for a different card that I couldn't use. And then I couldn't get back in touch with them for a while. There was something with the phone line wasn't working. I managed to get in touch with my cousin on Facebook Messenger, and he just sent me a photo of his card and gave me all of his details and just said, use my card, I'll get the money back from my parents, just book it. And I booked it eventually through my uncle's credit card. He called me again and we sorted it all out. And those flights were super expensive. I remember it being about £400. It was insane money to get home the next day. But everything was booked. My boyfriend came, we went to Selfoss and stayed in Selfoss for the night. And I hardly slept. I was just getting phone calls from my family, just updates throughout the night. And we had to leave really early in the morning to get to the airport. I think it was like 4 in the morning. And it was such bad weather. To get to Reykjavik and to get to the airport in Keflavik, you have to drive over a mountain from Selfoss. And it was just the worst, like stormy weather. And I remember the rain was just coming down. There was just a few points when we were going up the mountain where the car would like hydroplane in some water, but the puddles were so deep that the water was like splashing over the car like a huge wave, and there was a couple of times the windscreen, you just couldn't see through it, and I was thinking like, I'm gonna die before I get to see my mum. And it was terrifying. But we made it and we got on the flight, and it was the longest flight of my life. We ended up going to Manchester. I remember getting off the plane and I had just cried and cried and cried for the journey over. I was so worried about any updates, and obviously my phone was in plane mode, so I couldn't get any updates for that flight. We landed in Manchester and we had a really short window to get the train. And because I was crying so much, the automatic passport control that just scans your face and your passport denied me. I think I also forgot to take my glasses off, so that was probably part of the reason why as well. And then I got sent to go and queue for the person checking the passport, and it was just taking forever. I finally got there, and the man was really suspicious because I was crying, and he asked he just kept looking at me, looking at the passport, and just didn't want to let me through. And then a security woman behind him just came and said, "Is everything all right, love?" And I just snapped. I was like, "No, everything is not effing okay. Like, there's a family emergency. I need to get going." And they just told me to calm down and everything was okay. And I said, "It's not okay. You don't understand." And I just snatched my passport off this guy and just walked through passport control. And they didn't stop me. They just like, "Okay, just go." And we ran down to the train station, and we were 30 seconds too late. The train was just leaving as we got onto the platform. So we had to take another train, which the train was there just a few minutes later, but because it was a different train journey with different changes, it took about an hour and a half longer than the train that we were planning to get. And by the time we finally got to Birmingham, it was sometime in the afternoon, it was after lunchtime. My uncle met us at the train station and drove me to the hospital, and the whole time he was just trying to prepare me, saying, just be prepared, you won't recognise her, completely different. And when we got there, I found out I couldn't see her. It'd just been 5 minutes before. They had stopped all visitors to go and take her for a scan or something, I can't remember, and I had to wait about 2 hours before I could actually see her. It was late afternoon by the time I could see her. And I remember finally there was 2 people at a time allowed in, so it was me and my boyfriend went in together. At the door I was asked by the nurse who I was seeing and what my relationship was to her, and I said, "I'm here to see Leslie." The nurse took me in and took me to her bed, and I said to the nurse, "No, I'm here to see Leslie." She's like, "Yeah, this is Leslie." And I did not recognise my mum. It was the worst thing. She was on a life support machine. She had tubes coming out of everywhere. I couldn't even explain the amount of tubes that were hooked up to this machine and were coming out of my mum. It was awful. She had something helping her to breathe, she had the life support machine. And also on her head, she had a big bandage, and her head had been shaved. She always had short hair anyway, but it had been shaved, crew cut shaved. And on one side there was this huge bandage, huge puffed up bandage, and it just said "no bone" across it. And she looked so small and so pale. And I have a lot paler skin than my mum does, and she made me look tanned. She was white as a sheet, pretty much transparent. It was terrifying to see her in that state. She just didn't look like her. And because of the life support machine, she was just beeping every few seconds. The machine was just beeping, and I did not recognise that as my mum. This person in the bed, just no, I wouldn't accept it as my mum. And so for the first 10 days, she was in a coma. It was an induced coma that the medical staff had put her in to help protect her, and we were just taking it one day at a time. We didn't know if she was going to survive. In the waiting room, we got to know some other people who had also had family in intensive care with various injuries, and we got to know these people that were there. It was like a little community we had, because we were all going through something similar. Everyone had different accidents, obviously, but we were all just there all day, every day, for the visiting hours, for 8 hours a day, just sitting in the waiting room, taking it in turns to go in and see my mum. And it was horrific. They tried to wake her out of the coma a few times, from what I remember, and each time they decided it wasn't a good idea, so they put her back into the coma. And on I think it was the 10th day, they woke her up properly, and it was so good just seeing her awake. And obviously she couldn't speak, she couldn't do anything, but it was nice seeing her awake. And I think that was about the time that I felt it was okay to go back to Iceland, because the whole time I had no idea how long I was going to be in the UK, or if I was coming back to Iceland. I didn't know. I didn't want to move back to the UK, but I couldn't go back knowing that my mum was in hospital in a coma. So I think then I booked the flights, and I had to ask my other aunt for money to book the flights. I mean, the flights were very cheap, but the flights were going from her town in Bristol and coming back to Iceland. So I asked her if I could come and stay with her the night before and if she could pay for the flights. And luckily it was fine. So that was how I got the money for the flights back. And so after the 10th day, I was just going to the hospital every day and just trying to spend time with my mum before I could fly back. And it was so weird because she was awake and she could start to interact after a couple of days, and she would just look at you and sometimes try to smile a little bit, but she couldn't talk and she didn't really know what was going on, and it was kind of like looking after a baby. Also, apparently she kept trying to pull the tubes out, and my dad had actually told the nurses that she would do that because she's done that when she was in hospital before, my dad remembered. So they had to give her these like big boxing glove type things, like these big padded mittens, so that she wouldn't pull the tubes out. But she got really sneaky and she would eventually start trying to reach out, like she wanted to hold a hand, and we were allowed to take the gloves off if we were holding her hand. And then as soon as she got the hand, you know, she'd like reach up to try and stroke your face or do something really nice, and as soon as she let go of the hand, she would grab the tubes out. You couldn't trust her. And while we were all in the waiting room, I decided to do a crowdfunder, and it was really bizarre because I am quite financially independent. That's how my mum raised me, and I've never really had to ask for money before because, I mean, I've never had money, but I would never ask for it. It's just the way I've been raised, is to just deal with what I have. But I knew that I was going to need support financially to be able to afford the trips to visit my mum back and forth from Iceland, because I was determined to stay in Iceland. And within a few days I had reached the goal. I had set a goal of £1,000, and I think we ended up getting to, I don't know if it was £1,050. It was just a little bit over I managed to get to, but I hit the goal. And I never expected it, and I was so grateful to everyone that donated. So if anyone who donated is watching, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. And on day 14, I ended up flying back to Iceland, and it was kind of scary because I didn't really know if I still had a job. And I didn't know when I would be able to see my mum again next. And I didn't want to have to get a new job and then explain to them, like, I need to be in the UK every few weeks. But luckily there was still a job open for me, and I did manage to go and see my mum roughly, I think it was 6 weeks until the next time I went back. And I ended up having to go back every couple of months, every few months, because I just couldn't get more time off work than that. And I did end up getting a new job 5 months later, and I couldn't really just take loads of time off in that new job. And luckily by the time I started that job though, my mum was out of hospital. Or I don't think it was immediately, I think not long after I started that new job. So I did my visits back to the UK, and for the first few months my mum was in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, which is one of the best hospitals in the UK, and I am so glad she was there. One of the later visits, I think maybe the second time I went back, I was told that she was going to have to transfer to a different hospital, and I was given the choice between Sandwell Hospital and Heartlands Hospital. Heartlands has a really bad reputation, and my mum wouldn't let me be born there, and I don't blame her. So I was like, I'm not letting her go to that hospital. I didn't know anything about Sandwell. I just knew that my mum wasn't going to Heartlands, and she ended up going there, and I think that was a good decision. The staff there were lovely, and it was closer to my stepdad, and I think he appreciated that as well. So for the next few months I was just visiting back and forth and seeing my mum's progress, and because I was having such a big gap in between, I was seeing a lot of progress, and it was lovely. It was really good. I even started to get her to do things like trying to write down in a book when she had some movement back and when she was talking again. And there was one time that I did that and it was so sweet. I was trying to get her to write her own name and I just wrote it first and then I was trying to get her to copy it. So her name's Leslie. She started to write the L and she wrote Lauren. She wrote my name. And underneath it she wrote I land, like Iceland. And it was just so sweet because she wasn't fully there, but she clearly knew who I was and knew things like that. My family would call me when I was back in Iceland every so often, video call me with my mum on the phone, and it was good to see her then. But there was one really heartbreaking time where I think it was my nan that called me, can't remember, and my mum was on the video call and she said, I was talking to your mum earlier. And I was like, what? You are my mum, thinking she was a bit confused. And she said, no, I'm not. Sally's your mum. Sally's my aunt. And that was really heartbreaking. Like, she couldn't remember that I was her daughter and she fully refused. I was saying, Mom, you're my mum. No, I'm not. Sally's your mum. And that was just heartbreaking. I had to go into work about half an hour after that and I was almost in tears. It was horrible not having my mum remember me as her daughter. And I remember on my second visit, the nurses told me that they had heard that she had a daughter, but because I wasn't visiting very often, they were trying to say to my mum, you've got a daughter, Leslie, where is she? And she said, yeah, my daughter's in Iceland. And the nurses didn't believe her, they thought it was the brain injury. They said, do you mean Ireland? Is your daughter in Ireland? So when I came back, they asked, where do you live? And I said, Iceland. And they were all shocked. They were, she was right. What? My mum suffered a bleed on the brain, a brain injury, a few broken ribs, a shattered pelvis from what I remember, and a broken leg, or a fractured leg. But there was some confusion about whether it was actually fractured or not. She was in 2 hospitals and they hadn't really communicated. The first hospital said she had, and the second hospital hadn't been told that information, so I don't really know about the leg. How the accident happened: she was a cleaner at B&B and she had another job working on a jacket potato stand in the city centre. She was leaving the B&B job and crossing the road to get the bus into the city centre. There was no crossing on that road. There is, since the accident actually, there has been a few accidents on that road since, and there is now a crossing on that road, so that's one good thing that came out of this, I guess. And somehow, while she was crossing the road, she was hit by a car, and it has been highly debated whether she went back into the road or not. There's no evidence, which was really weird, considering the CCTV everywhere. The only CCTV footage that the police actually managed to get was from someone's house, and the footage only starts when my mum is already on the car. Like, the car comes into frame with my mum on the bonnet, so that they didn't actually capture the actual accident. And this was a busy road. There was a double-decker bus full of people and other people on the street, on the road, in houses, and there is not a single witness that came forward about the accident. And it was very hard to get any kind of justice for what happened. In my eyes, the police didn't handle it very well. They cleared up the scene as fast as possible just to get the traffic moving again, so there was no evidence on the road, it was all gone. The police told us a different story from the paramedics as to what some witnesses did. The police said that the paramedics told them that she was joking with them and conscious and lucid when she got into the ambulance, and her condition worsened later. I spoke to some witnesses who actually said that she was unresponsive straight away before the paramedics got there. So don't understand the police's side of things. I don't trust the police in the whole situation, honestly. I don't think any of us do. The police didn't investigate very well. They couldn't find witnesses, they didn't find any good CCTV footage, and myself and my aunt actually went on Facebook and tracked down some people ourselves, just from Facebook comments. It was, it was a news article, there was articles about what happened on Facebook, and we were just messaging everyone that said they'd seen it on the comments. Like, people were tagging their friends saying this must have been what we saw, and a lot of them just turned out to be people that had like walked past or like had just seen something going on with the police later on. But we did actually find 2 people, my aunt found one and I found one, who had helped my mum, and we passed those details on to the police. But that shouldn't really have been our job. They should have done that themselves. They should have been able to. So I am incredibly angry that the police didn't do what I felt they should have done. It was their job, and I just don't think they did a very good job of dealing with this incident. One of the biggest problems in this situation is the legal system. Here in Iceland, I have friends from all different countries, and most of them have told me that if this had happened in their home country, my mum would be receiving compensation no matter if it was her fault or not. If it couldn't be proven, she should still get compensation because she was hit by a car and has life-limiting injuries. Not in the British system. The police advised us to sue the man, as that was the only way that my mum would get any compensation for what happened. And we are not the kind of people that are into suing people. It wasn't a good option, but we went ahead with it. So we spoke to a solicitor when my mum was still in hospital. She wasn't able to make her own decisions, but I made a decision on her behalf that we would be getting legal help to try and get some money for my mum, because she can never work full time again, unfortunately, due to her injuries. It took 3 years, no, nearly 4 years, because it only just resolved. It took about 3.5 years for this case to come to any kind of conclusion. The guy driving fought it so much, and I think he has a lot of money just based on the car. I don't know anything about him, but based on the car that he has, I think he's pretty well off. And my mum can never work full time again and doesn't have anything. She received a very small amount to live on for the rest of her life. It's hardly anything. She can't even buy a home with the money that she received. And he tried to sue her to pay for the legal proceedings, like his side. So my mum's solicitor took 25% or 20% commission, which is fine. That was agreed upon before we went ahead with this. But he also tried to get her to pay for his legal proceedings from the small amount of money that she received from him. It didn't make any sense, the way things have gone. And I just don't have any faith in the British system. She's not entitled to PIP, which is the personal independence, I can't remember the word, personal independence allowance, like the benefits that you get for having a disability, despite her life-limiting injuries. And she had to do an assessment for it, and the assessment is someone comes and you have a list of things that you have to do with them, such as like making a cup of tea, going to the shop, and you get assessed based on what you can do. And they had to watch my mum shower, which she said was one of the most humiliating experiences of her life, was having someone watch her shower naked. Because she could do all of these things without help, she's not entitled to anything, which is ridiculous. She had a brain injury, and since the accident, my mum just can't work as much as she used to. She's always been very energetic and outdoorsy, adventurous. She just doesn't have the energy anymore. She gets tired very easily. And the biggest thing that has come out of this accident, my mum now suffers from epilepsy. So she has fits, she has seizures, and she could have a seizure at any moment. So she should be allowed this disability money, but she's not. And I just don't have any faith in the British system at all. There's no justice. There is absolutely no justice in Britain for people who need help, who genuinely need the help. And it is a crying shame. Now, I wanted to talk a bit about things personally for me that still affect me since the accident. And the main thing that still affects me is I started learning to drive in Iceland almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in May. And I started learning to drive properly like 11 years ago. But in Iceland I started to learn to drive 2 years ago. And I have trauma from my mum's accident. About 6 months after I started learning to drive, I was doing my practice driving, which is driving with a friend, like supervising. And I could just see my mum on life support. Just any time I blinked, I would just see a huge vivid image of my mum on life support. And I don't think I'll ever fully get over that. I did get some help for it, and I can drive without seeing that constantly, but it's always on the back of my mind that I could do that to someone else, and I never want to do that to someone else. So it's taken me a long time to just learn to drive. My provisional licence is nearly expired and I still haven't done my theory. I'm trying to get that done before it expires, so fingers crossed it all works out. But that's just something that I'm always going to be terrified of when I'm driving, I think. I'm just always going to be able to see my mum in the life support machine after being hit by a car. And another thing, I'm also terrified of not having my phone with me in case there's another emergency. So I always have my phone on, it's always next to me, and if my job ever told me that I couldn't have my phone with me, I would walk out, I think. It's like an anxious thing that I have to have my phone with me just in case, because I never want to miss a call like that again and be told that someone that I love is dying and I have to get home now. Like, if I missed a call like that again, it would haunt me for the rest of my life. But an update about my mum. She is doing well. She has changed personality, I feel. A lot of people feel, I'm not the only one who feels that. She's not the same person that she was before. So she does have this epilepsy, like I've mentioned. And she's always been a very positive person, a very bright person, and she still is overall a positive person. But there is this kind of negativity to her now, I feel. I think she's just kind of angry at the world, is the impression that I get. It's hard to explain, it's hard to say. But overall she is positive, and that will never change, that's just who she is as a person. But she doesn't have all of her memories. I mean, she does have a lot of memories, but she doesn't have all of them. So I can't reminisce with her the same way that I used to. And she's just not quite the same. And it's like I've had to grieve for a parent who is still alive. And I've had to learn to let go of the way my mum was and learn to know who she is now. And that's difficult from 1,000 miles away. So it's been a very weird time. It is fascinating to learn about the human brain though, and the way that the brain heals. And another side effect from the accident is that my mum has no sense of taste and no sense of smell. And doctors don't know if she will ever regain those senses, which is awful. She has started being able to taste chili slightly, so I love hot sauce, I always have, so I just buy her some hot sauce, but she can't taste chocolate or things that she used to love. She can't smell anything, and that would be awful to live like that, I think. And we don't know if that's ever going to come back. So I just wanted to make this video to tell that story, and I hope that by telling this story and just being open about these horrible parts of being a foreigner, these emergencies we might have back home, I could help someone else who might be in the same position, just help you to feel less alone. know that you're not the only person in the world going through this. So that was my story. I would love to hear from other people that have gone through this or something similar. Let me know in the comments if you have, and you can always reach out to me if you would like to talk about it, or if you're going through something similar right now. So have a lovely day. Bye.